Hello everyone, this is Mr. Slomka and this is going to be our first lesson on our second unit, which is going to be on culture. We are going to be looking at a couple of these topics that you see right here. So we're going to look at some language and culture, norms and folkways, beliefs and material culture, as well as cultural diversity and similarity. We're going to be spending a lot of time talking about the United States of America and its culture because you are an expert on that. And we're also going to be taking a look at a couple of other cultures that you are not so familiar with because it is fun to analyze from an outsider's perspective. Basis of culture. So let's talk about the basics right here. Culture defines how people in a society behave in relationship to others and the physical objects that they find there. So culture is very much the way that we are going to be acting. It is not the people who are doing the acting, but it is the actions that they are going to be taking. When you have an animal and it's acting out, it is not usually based off of culture, but rather based off of instincts. When a dog lays down to take a nap, it circles itself around a couple times before it lays down. And that's based off of instinct. That is something that was part of their genes and their biology. And if the dog has lived in a very nice plush home, it may not even totally understand why it has to circle around because it's never had to take a nap in tall grass before. But it is definitely something that that animal has to do. Human actions are not determined by instincts all the time. A lot of human actions are determined by what they have learned and what they have observed. What is culture? Culture is going to be knowledge, language, values, customs, as well as physical objects. So knowledge and language and values and customs, these are all non-tangible things. These are abstract things that exist within our minds and that we talk about and we think about and that we take part in. While physical objects are going to be things like valuable tools or technology that is passed down. That is particularly important these days. We have a very materialistic culture and we focus a lot of our time and energy on technology specifically. You need to have a cell phone, you need to have a computer, you need to have a car, you need to know how to use these objects in order to function properly in the culture that we live in. Other non-material things like beliefs and rules and customs, those are things like celebrating New Year's. You go to your friend's house and you celebrate New Year's each year. It's just another night in the winter, but it becomes an important kind of event for you. Going to church on Sundays, those are kinds of things that are important to some people, and that becomes part of their culture. How is culture used to explain human social behavior? So we're always interested in sociology class and the behavior of the society. And so what we're going to do is what people do and don't do, what they like and what they dislike, and what they believe and what they don't believe. So whether you choose to go to the gym or don't go to the gym, that is part of your culture. Whether you like to eat sushi or whether you dislike sushi, that's part of your culture. Whether you believe in a Christian God or whether you don't believe in a Christian God, that is part of your culture as well. Culture provides the blueprint that people in a society use to guide their relationships with others. So you can take that blueprint and you can kind of move away from it if you'd like, but most of the time you're going to probably follow a lot of the blueprint. It is part of something that you've observed probably for a very long time, and so it seems very natural and comfortable for you to do the things that you've seen the other people around you do as well, such as your family or your friends. Some ideas about this. Girls are encouraged to wear pink and play with dolls. That's just something that is part of the culture that we live in. But at the same time, it wasn't always part of the culture that we lived in. A long time ago, if you had a baby and it had brown eyes, then you would dress the baby in pink clothing. And if you had a baby that had blue eyes, you would dress your baby in blue clothing. It didn't matter if it was a boy or a girl. Then as the Industrial Revolution happened, things changed, and so did culture. What the manufacturers of baby clothing found was that if you had a mother who had a girl first and then a boy second, there was a good chance that both of those babies would have the same color eyes. And so if you had a brown-eyed girl and then you had a brown-eyed boy, you might just use those same pink clothes for both of them. But if they changed the rule so that girls wore pink and boys wore blue, then that mother that had all the pink clothes for her daughter would need to buy all blue clothes for her son. Same kind of thing with toys. Manufacturing has determined that girls should play with different toys than boys, so that if you have two children, you might have to buy a whole new set of toys for your children. Similar to that is that boys are encouraged to pump iron and exercise and grow their muscles because that makes them look manly and healthy and aggressive and alpha. The funny thing about that is that in a lot of different portions of culture, if women do the same thing, if they become interested in going to the gym and exercising and powerlifting and things like that, they might be viewed as grotesque, which is unfair. That is a difference right there that doesn't necessarily need to exist. How are culture and society related? Well, one cannot exist without the other, but they are not identical. So society is going to be the group of people. They're going to live in a defined territory and participate in some common cultural things. So if we just stopped it as people that lived in a territory, that would be society. Okay, but as soon as they start to interact with each other, which they are inevitably going to do, that is when culture comes into play. So these two ideas are unique. They are different from each other, but they are also deeply intertwined with one another. You really can't have a society without culture unless you put some very strong restrictions on it, which is almost impossible. So these are going to be very closely related. Society does breed the culture, and you can't really have a society without the culture. Okay, let's talk about how we learn our culture. So as we've talked about before, instincts is a great way to start. So a lot of times people think, oh, that's an instinct. That's something that everybody has inside of them, and that's the reason why we do it the way that we do. An instinct is something that is genetically inherited. It's a pattern of behaviors. Like I said earlier, a dog will spin around 3 times before it lays down. Animals and insects are highly dependent on instincts. Dogs know how to interact with each other based off of instincts. Bees know how to follow the directions of other bees in order to find the good flowers based off of genetic code and biology. They weren't taught those skills, they just were born with them. Human problems are too complex for instincts alone, and so humans have evolved and adapted, and they have learned to change the way that they deal with them. Our brains are just very large as well. We have the ability to grow and change, and so we use our brains, we use culture, and we grow and change. If humans were controlled by instincts alone, we would all behave in the exact same way. And 1, that would be boring, and 2, I'm sure you know that that's just not true. It's fall right now, and something that pretty much everybody should be excited about is football. But me, as a man who lives here in Rochester, Michigan, I have almost zero interest in football. It's just not something that I enjoy very much. And I know that that's a little bit backwards and strange, but that's just how I am. So I'm certainly not working off of instincts, because if that was the case, then football would be some kind of gene and we'd all have it. Other ones that we have on here, all women would have that mother instinct, and that's just not true. There are plenty of women who are inspired and driven by other things than becoming a mother. And so there are women who choose not to even get married, and that focus on their professional lives. They can get married and focus on their professional lives. You have women who just want to be a mother and not necessarily get married or have a professional life at all. So there are differences, and that is okay. That's because we learn from our culture. We do not learn from our instincts. Humans rely on culture to determine basic needs. So there are instincts that we do have. Humans do get hungry, and so when we get hungry, we make sure we eat.